Hi, now I will start the recording for the session. So today it's Meltem Yilmaz, and biology BC degree and forest engineering master degree. So I would like to share today the session for the fundamentals of sustainability to understand the relationship between what the private sectors and enterprises do for sustainability and on global scale, and what is the government and authorities which are trying to build the strategies. So it is to understand the role of private enterprises and innovation in the transition to sustainability. So there are, of course, when we talk about sustainability, there are issues like plastic pollution, water shortage, biodiversity, climate change, air pollution. How can these be viewed as risks or opportunities? Sustainability maturity. So there are key industries that also that we are working on sustainable issues like oil and gas, energy heat, agriculture, transport, built environment, banking and finance. So all these kind of industries are either supporters or they are somehow putting this environment under risk. So today we will do understand the role of private enterprises and innovation in the transition of sustainability. So the global shift towards sustainability, private enterprises are sitting in the center of the transition. So governments can set policies and develop strategies, targets. However, companies are the actors which are the key actors. They design products, manage supply chains, influence consumers' behavior, and invest in new technologies. Their decisions shape markets, resource use, and environmental impact at a scale no other actors can match. So it's a very fast and neat movement. That is why private enterprises carry significant responsibility not only to reduce harm, but to actively drive the challenges needed for sustainability in the future. Why private enterprises matter? Most global production and consumption is controlled or influenced by the private sector. So, energy, transport, oil and gas, manufacturing, retail, agriculture, technology, and finance, they are all uh, by dominated by the companies of different sizes on local scale, regional scale, national, or even global scale. This, this means that they have resources, expertise, and market influence to reshape all the industries. They have all the kind of investment and resources. When we talk about how the businesses innovate, they need to resolve their operations and shift the business in a faster motion. So therefore, their operations or interests, investments of interests in new sustainable models, the ripple effects spread through entire value chain. So they can act faster. Private enterprises also understand market needs, demands, and they have the competitive adaptability so that they can push also the policymakers. Private entities have the flexibility to experiment, scale the solutions quickly, and respond to consumer expectations. As customers become more aware of sustainability, companies are pushed to reduce waste, cut emission, and offer ethical and responsible products. So the importance of innovation, when we talk about the importance of innovation, it is a kind of opening a way of solution. So therefore, innovation is the engine that makes sustainable transition possible. So many challenges that private enterprises face, linked to climate change, biodiversity, pollution, and the resource scarcity which is coming up, needs to be solved. And the solutions are by innovative transitional and innovation solutions. New technologies, new business models, and the way of thinking or needs to be changed because of the challenges that we are talking. So this includes the development of new models of business, such as renewable energy systems, electrical vehicles, circular economy models, carbon captures, opportunities, sustainable agriculture, low waste manufacturing, recycling, digital tools, and of course, uh, renewable use of the resources as well. So this makes, of course, the products more efficient during the process of production. So innovation is also a creative opportunity for increasing employment opportunities. Companies that invest in sustainable technologies often gain first mover advantage and that increase their competitiveness advantage. So attract the investment, increase their shares, reduce long-term cost, and build strong relationship with customers and regulators. It's a kind of problem-solving tool or method. Sustainability is not just a cost, it becomes a source of competitiveness as well. So, of course, when we talk about innovation, innovation is not done even only by private enterprises or business sectors. It is also a kind of motivation for persons or innovators or even policymakers. So we need to understand the difference and, of course, the cooperation effect of private enterprises and the authorities. So, how private enterprises have to drive the transition? So, business influence the sustainability agenda in several ways, as the following on the screen that we are sharing. So, it is the redesign products and services to reduce the environmental and social impacts to the environment. They transform supply chain and to eliminate waste, emissions, and unethical practices. They shift the renewable energy and energy efficiency systems. They collaborate with governments, non-governmental organizations, and other companies to set industry standards. They use innovation to create new markets for sustainable products and technologies. As financial markets increase, they focus on the ECG that we open up as the environment, social, and governance. performance, which is also one of the critical key measures, performance measures. Companies are also incentivized to behave responsibility, to show their responsibility about the environmental social governance performance. So long-term investors want, of course, stability and low risk. This is how they can gain advantage in the market. This aligns sustainability with economic performance as well, but I'm trying to mention. So why their role is essential? Why is the role of the private sector so essential for the environmental social governance? So the transition of sustainability needs speed, of course, and creativity and a scale. Qualities that private enterprises are unequally equipped to deliver. That's also one of the priorities. Governments can regulate and set directions, but businesses innovate. They need to take just action, operationalize and commercialize their products and serve it into the market. So they need to do it faster, find faster solutions, and do it as up. So without private sector actions, global sustainability goals cannot be achieved. So global sustainability goals that we have also mentioned them in the previous session, which are the driving force of the planet under the United Nations head and umbrella. So when we just try to describe how sustainability issues present risks and opportunities for businesses in both local and global scale, we need to understand the sources of risks. So now let's talk about what might be the risks. So it is businesses face a range of risks. It is they can ignore or mishandle some sustainable issues to decrease the costs, or don't want to invest as much as they need to do that. So climate changes bring these risks on the kitchen. So these are the physical risks, such as floods, heat waves, drought, and storms. These are the kind of natural risks that may turn into enormous hazards, damage the properties, disrupt the supply chain, and raise insurance costs, which is another kind of issue that needs to be taken into consideration during the investment procedure, planning procedure. Pollution, poor waste management, and resource overuse can lead also to fines, legal actions, and strictly regulatory controls in the on local scale. So this is also another kind of investment. In many industries, customers now reject companies that contribute to environmental damage. So there is also another path phase. We call it the customer relationship, and understand the way of how customers understand sustainability and the effect of companies on climate change. So staffing, community trust, and daily operations are other impacts that can affect the company business services, of course, and the process. In the global context, risk becomes more complex. Global supply chains can be disrupted by extreme weather, pollution, political responses to climate change, forest fires, natural hazards, natural resource capacity scarcities, or environmental regulations in other countries, such as it can be the water scarcity and increasing drought in a region where water is one of the resources the business is using during production. So this is a risk and an example that can put under risk the business by water scarcity and increased investment. So, of course, a company sourcing raw materials internationally may face rising prices as a risk, export restrictions, or ethical concerns such as deforestation or labor exploitation. So we face it when people are trying to protest some companies, textile companies, that they are using, enforcing labor force for working for more hours, unpaid more hours, or very less payment conditions, or even very bad working conditions. So companies trading globally must also adapt to international agreements, carbon taxes, and changing the customer expectation across different markets. So they need to also promote that they are environmental friendly globally, and they are having sustainable plans, strategies, which is not damaging the global environmental concerns and the development scales of the UN. So, sustainability as a source of opportunity, when we talk about it, while sustainability introduces risks, it is also a kind of opportunity for the growth of the business. So, the transition to cleaner energy, low carbon transport, sustainable agriculture, and circular economic models generates new industries and new branding strategies. So for the customer demand. So customers are reading how and what kind of energy resources the um, the during the production process is being used. So business that innovate in these areas gains competitive advantage by branding this kind of sort um, activities, attract investment and build stronger brand loyalty. So this is an advantage, and it is an opportunity for the company. On local scale, opportunities often come from efficiency of improvements, community engagement, and responsible to resource use. So for local manufacturers, the local population inhabitants, they need to be supported as well. There needs to be a cooperation. A local manufacturer can cut energy costs by switching the renewables to transfer the energy resources to renewable energy resources, or improve the reputation by supporting local environment projects and include its business model in the local projects of environmental friendly impact projects. So sustainable practices also help attract talents, especially younger women workers, younger workers who want to work for responsible employers. So this is an advantage also for the business to employ innovative young professionals. On the global scale, the opportunities are even larger. Companies that provide green technologies, use renewable energies, ethical products, or responsible supply chain standards can brand that and enter the new markets and form partnership with governments, international institutions, and make cooperations possible on the sustainable scale. Meeting international sustainable standards opens access for these kind of companies. So new fundings will be available for such business models, including the ECG focused investment programs. So multinational firms are increasingly rewarded by reducing emissions, improving the labor conditions, and adapting circular models because these actions lower long term costs and build resilience. So, why both risks and opportunities matter? Of course, it matters for the increase of the business model and the increase of getting more funds. So, and it is a risk to to show a negative impact. We will talk about it in the next coming steps. Why both risks and opportunities matter? So the shift towards sustainability is reshaping the business landscape. What for? It is changing the way of business, both in investment, manufacturing, processing, and of course, servicing. Companies that fail to respond face financial losses. So, regulatory pressure and declining trust. This is an important impact for a company. Companies that adapt early improve resilience, profitably, and competitiveness. Whether operating locally or globally, now it is the day for the companies to increase the impact, raise the awareness for the environment so that the customers need to understand what they are buying. So, sustainability has stopped being a side concern and has become a strategic issue on this perspective that directly influence the growth, risk management, and long term success of the private sectors. So, when we explain why governments are not sufficient to tackle environment and social challenges, we will talk now about the differences of the uh, government and the private sector. Environment and social challenges are too large, too complex, and too interconnected for governments to solve alone. While governments set laws, policies, and national strategies. So, governments lack direct control over business operations. Many sustainable challenges are global, not national. Governments often move slowly, so they they are aware about the climate change, biodiversity loss, ocean pollution, and supply chain labor issues cross borders. One government cannot control the behavior of industries overseas or the environmental impacts created in other countries. For example, for this, UK company may source materials from Asia and Africa where different regulations apply. Only coordinated actions from companies, international bodies, and consumers can address global problems. So governments often move slowly. Policy development is tied to politics, public opinions, and legislative process, which takes time. So environmental problems, however, are accelerating. So business innovation move faster than government regulations. So, and governments are the supporters of this technology improvements. They can fund the investments partially, but they are not directly the innovators. So the innovators are the business of their own. Another thing is, of course, limiting funding and competing political priorities. So government must divide budgets across other head titles like healthcare, education, housing, defense, welfare. So it depends. So sustainability demands long-term investment. We cannot cut sustainability plans in one season or 1 year. But political cycles are short-term. Some governments they prioritize the climate action during economic downturn or election. They stop investing to this kind of. Even we see in the COP um, process that some governments, countries re-sign it and don't want to and include inside the agreements. So business and consumers shape demand and behavior. Even strong laws are ineffective in companies and consumers continue unsustainable practices. For example, governments can encourage recycling, but if manufacturers still use hard to recycle packaging, so or consumers refuse to use recycling materials in packaging, so it is not a good way of solution to put the strategy. Real solutions require cooperation between private sectors, production industries, and policymakers. So it needs to be an intervention and a transition of all parties. Of course, businesses and consumers uh, shape the behavior. Social challenges require culture and organizational change as well. So, issues like inequality, poor working conditions, discrimination, and community well being depend on workplace culture, businesses, ethics, and organizational behavior. Governments can set minimum standards, but they cannot create ethical leadership, fair business models, or inclusive workplace practices. This is done by the private community and private sectors. Companies must take responsibility for how they treat employees, suppliers, and communities. Another thing is, of course, innovation comes mainly from private sectors. This is the reality of how innovation takes place. Technologies need to address by companies environmental and social problems, renewables, clean manufacturing, circular economy, low carbon materials, digital technologies, and efficiency tools. They are all developed by commercialized businesses. So it is the way how innovation is starting. Governments support research, policy development, and strategy development, and they support the market and industrials uh, in scales and solutions of opening industrial zones or giving some funds. Without private sectors, innovation, sustainability transitions cannot happen fast enough. So, in this part, when we conclude all the things, governments provide direction, regulation, and oversight, but they don't have the speed, global reach, and or operational control to deliver sustainable on their own. Private enterprises, investors, civil society, and consumers all play essential roles. Tackling environmental and social challenges requires a shared effort where government policy sets the boundaries and businesses and communities drive practical transition. In this part, we will explain the meaning of externalities. So we will talk about externalities, how they tackle through innovation process, product and reporting. So in this part, we will talk about process, product, reporting in the innovation process. So externalities are the side effects of economic activities that affect the people or the environment. So we need to understand, yes, business is affecting the people and the environment, but are not reflected in cost or prices of the products, services involved. They can be positive, benefit to the society, or negative, harm to the society. So we will consider these two topics and focus on it. In sustainability, the main concern is negative externalities, such as pollution, greenhouse gas emission, waste, noise, health impacts, biodiversity loss, and poor labor conditions. These costs are pushed onto society instead of being paid for the organizations that care them. Because at the end, the society gets the effect on it. Businesses don't feel the financial impact of these harm directly. If there is something, they have little natural incentive to reduce them. This is where innovation becomes essential. Companies can redesign how they operate, what they produce, and how they report their impacts, ensuring the externalities are recognized, reduced, and manage the responsibilities for them. Of course, when we tackle with externalities through the process innovation and the product innovation, in the process innovation, it means changing the way an organization operates to minimize environmental and social harm. This includes, there are lots of cleaner production methods, reducing waste by improving resource efficiency, recycling materials. Sustainable supply chain management is another thing. Choosing suppliers with lower emissions. Pollution control technologies like carbon capturing modeling. It's 11 filtration hours. Systems or low emission manufacturing technologies. These innovations directly reduce negative externalities. So this needs also an investment. So companies need to invest in this kind of process innovation ways which reduce the risk of the society. Tackling product innovation for externalities, product innovation focuses on redesigning or replacing products so they create less harm across their entire life cycle. We can give examples, we can talk about them. Eco design using fewer materials, using recyclable materials or biodegradable materials. Low carbon alternatives such as electric vehicles, plant-based products, or energy efficient appliances. Circular products designed to be repaired, reduced, or returned rather than thrown away. Harmful materials, for example, replacing toxic chemicals with safer alternatives, such as replacing plastic with a natural product. By rethinking the product itself, redesigning, companies reduce externalities linked to extraction, production, use, and disposal. Customers also benefit from lower environmental impact, longer lasting products, and lower operating costs. So, reporting in the tackling externalities process and the transparency is another key priority. So, there are different kind of reports. We will talk about them. One of them is, of course, the environmental, social, and governance reporting. Companies are doing this for their sustainable goals. Life cycle assessment LCA is a measure to full impact of a product from raw materials to disposal. Integrated reporting combining financial and sustainability performance in a single statement. Science-based targets which align a company's emissions or resource use of global sustainability goals. Digital tools such as real-time carbon accounting, blockchain supply chain tracking, or sustainability dashboards. Better reporting shines a light on externalities that were previously hidden. So it creates accountability, drives investment decisions, and pushes companies to innovate internally once impact becomes visible and comparable. So companies need the reporting. When we conclude this part, externalities represent the hidden cost of economic activities. Tackling them requires more than compliance, it requires innovation. So, by transforming the processes, redesigning products, and strengthening reporting practices, organizations can reduce their negative impacts, respond to the stakeholders' expectations, and unlock new opportunities for sustainable growth. Innovation makes externalities visible, manageable, and ultimately avoidable. So, in the part four, it is the other um, output that we are trying to understand. So, we analyze the industries that most contribute to climate change and environmental degradation and evaluate how they can tackle the problem at both local and global scale. So that means every industry and every company on local scale needs to be assessed on the sustainable framework. So several industries are responsible for the majority of global emission, resource depletion, and environmental harm. This is really an important uh, function that we need to assess on the local scale and global scale. So the impact of uh, companies, industries, cuts across supply chain, energy systems, land use, and waste. Understanding these industries helps explain where the pressure points are and how target actions locally and globally can drive meaningful changes. So, what do we need to think about? How do they harm? So, the first thing is, of course, energy and the use of fossil fuels. So, the extraction of and the processing, burning of coal, opening mines, oil, and gas generates the largest share of global greenhouse gas emission. So, it increases the atmospheric temperature. This sector is also linked to air pollution, ecosystem disruption, and land degradation in the way of open mines. So mining landscape areas. Agriculture and livestock. This is the second one. Agriculture contributes heavily to methane and nitrogen oxide production, emission, deforestation, biodiversity decline, and soil degradation. Livestock farming is one of the biggest sources of methane worldwide. This is also increasing the greenhouse effect and gas emission. Transport. Road transport, aviation, shipping collectively produce high carbon dioxide emission and air pollution as well. Transport relies heavily on fossil fuels and puts pressure on urban air quality and public health. Manufacturing and heavily heavy industry. So steel, cement, chemicals, textiles, and electronics consume vast amount of energy during the production process as and reusing raw materials. They generate vast pollution, plastic contamination, and toxic byproducts. This is also making environmental pollution. Construction and real estate. Buildings use large volumes of concrete, steel, timber, and energy. So, construction, vast and urban land expansion contributes to habitat loss, soil loss, forest loss, and increased deforestation, rising the energy demands. Another thing is, of course, the fashion consumer goods. Textile, high volume of production of textiles, globalized supply chain, and short product lifestyles drive vast water consumption and chemical pollution and labor exploitation. So it is, of course, the thing is, of course, it is using water resources, textile. When we only think about textile production, use water high in amount and energy. And the fashion um, time is decreasing the use of textile. So it's a short-term consume which is increasing in demand because of the world population as well. So this is the consumer part. Also, the production part is another kind of environmental. It shows another kind of environmental negative impact. How these industries can tackle the problem at local level? Local strategy. So it is globally when we talk about. However, we need to we need to enter the local scale to understand that yes, everything we are talking at the end, the climate change, greenhouse effect are affecting on global scale the greenhouse gas emission. However, it is affecting also the local scale by air pollution, by using the natural resources which are limited. So local strategies focus on direct impact within communities, cities, and regions. As a former regional planner expert, we build strategies for that. So energy, shift to local renewable sources such as solar, wind, and community energy projects. This is really important to build renewable energy plantation areas. Improve grid efficiency and upgrade local energy infrastructure. So improve the efficiency of energy use on local scale. So decrease the demand of energy. Phase out coal and high pollution plants with region specific transition plans. So solve the issue that the community is demanding on coal, using coal as the main energy resource and turn it into renewable energy resource. This is also an investment on the local community. Agriculture. Support farmers to adopt regenerative practices, reduce fertilizer use, and restore soil. So, soil is a very important resource on the landscape when we talk about. So, we need to protect the soil as a resource, promote local seasonal food systems to cut transport emission. So, promote consuming food on seasonal basis production, protect the local diversity through habitat conservation and agroforestry. When we talk about transport, expand public transport, encourage the population public to use public transport, cycling infrastructures, encourage electric vehicles, update uptake through charging stations and incentives, reduce congestions, and improve air quality with clean air zones. Implement cleaner production technologies and local recycling loops, reduce water use, and install production pollution control systems, create local repair centers to prolong product lives. Construction. Of course, construction is one of the main impacts on the environment. Use sustainable building materials such as recycled steel, low carbon cement, or timber. Improve local standards, building standards for energy efficiency, minimize construction waste best by recycling material on site use. So, how these industries can tackle the problem at a global level? So, this was, of course, on local scale that we talked about. So, when we talk energy, agriculture, transport, manufacturing, construction, fashion, and consumers on global scale, global level. So, in the energy phase, we need to coordinate international carbon reduction targets and phase out timelines. So there was a COP31st a convention and meeting in Brazil, and they tried to manage reduce the carbon emission, increase global investment in renewables, grid interconnect and battery technology, and fossil fuel subsidize and support fair energy transitions in developing economies. So each these need to be tackled in the global perspective, and the global agreements need to be done in the COPs. That's very, very important. Agriculture. So stop deforestation because it is also accelerating during the forest fires. So, of course, beef, soy palm oil, and cocoa are also some of the effects that increase it. Improve global regulations on fertilizers, pesticides, and land use. Scale climate smart agriculture and share best practices internationally. Transport, to develop standards for aviation and shipping emission. Use sustainable fuels such as green hydrogen. Encourage cross-border rail freight and low-carbon logistics. So in manufacturing, adaptation international circular economic frameworks, enforce global standards for pollution, more label conditions and chemical safety, design products for reuse, repair, and recycling. Construction, promote global standards for net zero buildings, share innovations in low carbon cements, integrate climate resilience designs into infrastructure projects worldwide, not in a local scale. It needs to be on a global scale to protect the global entirely. Fashion and consumer goods. Regulate the global supply chain to eliminate sweatshops, pollution, and waste dumping. Adopt global take back schemes and circular product standards. Shift marketing and design practices towards longevity rather than displayability. When we conclude this part and this priority, so we need to understand that the industry that contribute the most to climate change, environment degradation, also hold the greatest potential for transformation. Locally, they can act through cleaner operations, community level changes, and more efficient processes. On global scale, they must collaborate on standards, technology, regulations, and supply chain reforms. They need to collaborate, otherwise there is no future for them. The combination of local responsibility, and global coordination is essential if these high impact industries are going to drive the transition to a sustainable future. When we go to the part 5, it's the priority 5, how we evaluate private enterprises and innovation as a critical way of the transition of sustainability. So, private enterprises play a central role, as we mentioned it in the previous priorities, in sustainability because they are the primary drivers of production, employment, technology development, and global supply chain drivers. Governments can set regulations and strategies, but it is the business that turn those policies into action on the ground. Innovation, the ability to create new solutions, technologies, models, and practices is what enables that transition to happen at speed and scale. Without active engagement of private sectors, enterprises, sustainability remains an aspiration rather than a practical reality. So private sectors are the main actors on local and global scale both. So we need to understand private enterprises control most of the world's resources, production, investment, and finally, they made an impact on the environment on global scale. So, how do we understand this? It is, of course, private enterprises, businesses make the decisions that shape how materials are extracted from the nature, how products are designed, how waste is managed, and how energy is consumed. They own the factories, manage the logistics, and employ the people who keep economies running. Because they have direct operational control, they can make immediate changes, switching renewable energy, redesigning packaging, reducing emission, investing in cleaner technologies, and improving working conditions. They also control most financial capital in the global economy. Private investments in research, technology, and infrastructure dwarf public funding. This means the transition to sustainability depends heavily on how businesses choose to allocate the resources. So it is their decision. However, their decision gives a shape on the global scale. So the innovation solves problems that transitions approach cannot. What does it mean? Many sustainability challenges, climate change, resource scarcity, biodiversity loss, water stress, and pollution cannot be solved by regulation alone. So the local authorities or governments can make regulations. However, it is not even enough. They need to cooperate with the private sectors, enterprises. So they require new technologies and business models. Innovation provides these solutions by developing renewable energy systems and store technologies, redesigning materials to be recyclable, biodegradable, or low carbon. Sorry. Creating circular economy models that eliminate waste, inventing low emission transport solutions. Innovation reduces the cost of sustainable alternatives, making them economically competitive and easier to scale. So businesses can move faster than governments. They respond quickly to market opportunities, scale solutions internationally, adapt to consumer expectations, sorry. However, governments operate more slowly because they need to manage their political cycle, legal processes, bureaucratic system. It is a huge system they need to tackle and sort out. However, private sectors form rapid partnerships with suppliers, investors, and innovators to sort out the current demand need and go to the customers with the solutions. This speed is essential because the window for preventing irreversible environmental damage is closing. Sustainability needs fast action, and private enterprises are capable of delivering that pace. Governments, regulators need to regulate and assess and put the partnership on the table. Enterprises influence consumers' behavior and global culture as well. So when we talk about Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Zara, these are kind of H or even Amazon or price water companies or any other. These are brands that I'm giving as examples. Companies shape demand through product design, branding, marketing, and customer enterprise experience. So they shape it with the customer experience and demands. When businesses offer sustainable products such as electric vehicles, plant-based food, energy-efficient appliances, or low-waste packaging, they make sustainable choices more accessible. They normalize new behavior and make sustainability part of everyday life. So that means governments, regulatory bodies, institutions need to work with private institutions and private enterprises. So private enterprises normalize their new behaviors, adapt, and make sustainability part of everyday life. Global brands also set standards for suppliers when a large company demands lower emissions or ethical labor practices. Thousands of suppliers must adapt. This ripple effect expands sustainability across entire industry. So, at the when we are talking about innovation, which is a solution provider, way of solution provider, and changing the way, change. It's a change maker. Innovation drives competitiveness and long-term resilience. So innovation is made by the private enterprise. So, sustainability is no longer just about responsibility, it is a competitiveness advantage. Yes. Companies that innovate and create new markets, reduce long term costs, attract investors, and comply with regulations more easily. Those that resist change face higher operational costs, stricter regulations, reputational damage, loss of market share to greener competitors, financial penalties, and declining investors' interest. By investing in innovation now, enterprises protect themselves from future risks and position themselves from growth. So, when we conclude, private enterprises and innovation are critical for the transition to sustainability because they have the operational control, financial resources, technology capabilities, and market influence needed to drive large scale change. Governments can set direction, but the businesses deliver the solutions. Innovation ensures those solutions are effective, affordability, and scalable. Without dynamic private sector involvement, the transition to sustainability cannot happen fast or deeply enough to meet global challenges. So, at the end of our session, we today have talked about how private sector made an impact on the global context of sustainability both on global scale and local scale. And we have compared it with the governmental part, the regulatory part, and how it is tackling and how is it enhanced. So, in conclusion, of course, private sector is the part which is making innovation possible and changing the world in a better way, on a sustainable way. However, there needs to be a cooperation between the governmental part, the policymaker part, which is of course taking action slower because of there are the decision makers, there are the voters, the public opinion needs to be taken by the political path. Policymakers need to have time. So policymakers are not the one that are starting the innovation process. It is the private sector because the private sector is just facing and touching the consumer part. So it's making the processing possible, production possible. However, here it is the policymakers need to measure um, the impact, the positive and negative impact of the private sector. Because there are regulations, there need to be regulations on global scale. There need to be regulations on the local scale as well. So, because the impacts are at the end affecting the population and the communities, there are not even the communities that are living, there are communities which are working in the private sector, employees, and the employee conditions are also important impacts of the private sector. So when we talk about the sustainability strategies, we need to understand there are lots of I will show you now the references if we have them here. So there are, of course, some strategies for the sustainable development goals. So the United Nations is an umbrella organization where all the governments are members, and the regulations, sustainable regulations, sustainable development goals and the impact at the end, the activities, the strategies, the action plans, all they are for us, the inhabitants of our planets. Therefore, yes, the innovation part, the activities, actions are taken by the private sectors. They are the fast moving actors, but they need to have the regulations and regulatory policies as well with them, and put assets, put investment on the planet well-being. So there are lots of risks of the planet that we are facing. Climate change is a risk, and the carbon gas emission is a risk. Methane gas emission in the atmosphere is a risk. So in conclusion, we need to understand it. So today we have end up the session of it is the session of the understanding the role of private enterprises and innovation in the transition to sustainability. So for the next session, we will also talk about some examples of the private sector and the institutional sector, which have sustainable strategies as well. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining the UK University on the fundamentals of sustainability. Thank you very much.